Hey, today I'm talking about the original Japanese version of The Ring, the original Japanese version of The Grudge, and the movie where they crossed over. This stuff is Ring. This is a 1998 film, kind of loosely inspired by some real life stuff. And the basic premise is there is this cursed VHS tape, and if you watch it, you'll then get a phone call that says that you're gonna die in a week. And then after a week, you die. And it's really, really good. This is a very well-made film. It's got spooky tension the entire time through, though it does more so focus on like the mystery element of it all and just like piecing this whole thing together. But it's got so much great atmosphere and like so many like weird experimental things that work really well, especially because like they justified them story-wise. So that's why I'm like, yeah, it's great. And I think the mystery came together really, really well. And I think the ending worked really, really well. I really love the female lead. She did a great job of carrying the film. The male lead added a nice bit of energy when he popped up after a little bit. And they had a really good dynamic. I don't know, just really everything about this film was just like, yeah, no, this is good. Like as soon as it started, I was like, it just feels like it's a really good movie. And there were so many good spooks and it wasn't silly or ridiculous. It just all really clicked for me. And even the special effects, they still hold up. Like the stuff with the screen, I think worked really, really well. So yeah, if you're looking for a good scary movie, look no further. This movie is terrific. It's not only scary, it's legitimately a really good film. Next up is The Grudge. This is a 2002 film, and I thought it was the first of the franchise. Turns out it's actually the third film. The first two were direct-to-video, and there was also 2 short films before that. So in one sense, it's the 5th thing of the franchise, which is just crazy. Okay, so the basic premise of this is similar-ish to the previous one. It's the title, Juon. They explain the meaning of that as the first thing you see in the movie, which is it's about if there is a dramatic death that happens in a certain place, then that certain place gets cursed, and then bad stuff happens there. They explain it more eloquently in the movie. But more specifically, it's a haunted house type of thing. And the story is kind of like an anthology because it is all dealing with the same house, but it's told out of order and with each different section of the movie focusing on a different person. And it's a lot of people. I was honestly really impressed with how well it flowed together, even though it was like jumping back and forth in time and jumping from new character to new character. It really didn't feel like we were starting over, like the sort of feeling you can get when watching like a series of short films, just kind of that difficultness of getting your bearings of starting with new people all of a sudden. But here it honestly just connected really well. Even though they were disconnected in a sense, they were still also connected in a different sense. So this movie's still really good, but where it kind of falters a little bit is that it's very repetitive because all of the sections end the same sort of way, and there's a lot of them. And they don't do a great job of dealing out answers to the mystery, because there is a bit of a mystery to this film, not as much so as The Ring, but it doesn't really give us those bits and pieces to kind of help break up the spooky, scary stuff. But what this movie does well, I'd go so far to say as exceptional, is the spooky, scary stuff. This movie is terrifying and it is relentless. I mean, there is also the mystery of like trying to figure out how everything all fits together, which I think that's like the main glue of it and why it holds up and works really well, even if there's not the underlying mystery of like where everything's coming from and trying to get answers for that. See, a part of me wanted to rank it a little bit lower just because of not a lot of plot, but it crushed the scary stuff. So I'm like, I can't rank it lower because it got me emotionally. It made me scared, and that's its job. Its job was to make me scared, and it did it. So like, it worked. It was great. There are a couple of special effects that don't super duper hold up, but they're very fleeting and far between, so like, I can forgive them because most everything works really well. So if you want another really good scary time, give this a watch. This one's plot isn't as good as The Ring, but it's more scary than The Ring. So if you want more scares rather than more story, go for this one. Both are great films though. Both films are definitely worth a watch. So you really can't go wrong either way. And lastly is Sadako versus Kayako. This is a 2016 film and doesn't actually take place within the same continuity of the other two movies. It is based off of the other two movies, and for all intents and purposes is just a remake of the other two movies, not done as well. Regardless, the name refers to the main bad guys from both of the other two movies' verses. And really, this is the whole reason I wanted to do this, is because I'm like, oh, this sounds ridiculous. I gotta watch this. But then right before I watched it, I read a review that was like, the title is misleading. There really isn't a lot of verses. And I'm very glad that I read that, because had I not, I would have been very upset, because there really isn't a lot of verses in this movie. This movie is about 85% just a remake of The Ring, about 5% remake of The Grudge, and then 8% stuff with an exorcism, and then a 2% with the actual showdown. That's about right, yeah. And it's fine. It's really not scary. There was one scene that was actually scary, but even though I wasn't scared, I was actually entertained. Like, this movie did a good job of keeping my attention. It's not a bad movie. It's still interesting-ish. I would say the issue with this movie is that it really didn't want to live up to the title, which is so unfortunate. The first time they even mention the idea of a verses is a bit past the halfway point of the movie, and then it's brought up again kind of at the beginning of the third act, and then it doesn't actually happen until the last 10 minutes-ish, but then it doesn't last that long and it's not super interesting. The very end of the movie is interesting. I liked that. They ended it on a good note, which definitely firmly planted it in the liked category. I like this movie. I think the issue is that they really needed to commit to that versus idea, and it would have been so much fun of just like having these two spirits fight over different victims. That could have been really fun and interesting. And like, this isn't bad. It's just there's so much room for improvement that I'm like, come on guys, what are you doing? It's an interesting idea. Would I recommend it? I mean, it was fine. I liked it. Maybe. I think if you're really into the franchise, it's definitely not a bad time. But there are a lot better scary movies out there, so if you're curious about it, I would say go for it, but don't set your expectations too high. Like, it's good, it's just not what it could be, which is unfortunate, but yeah. Alrighty, now for today's rankings. First up, we got Ring, sitting at number 43 in the really like section. And then not too terribly far behind is... I mean, it's funny they're making that noise. I don't see it. Did I not rank it? Oh, there it is. Juan the Grudge, sitting at number 53, also in the really like section. And then bringing up the rear is Sadako versus Kayako, sitting at number 161 in the like section. And this is have a total of 234 old movies so far this year.